Hello and welcome to Scarves Around the Funnel, episode 403, the podcast dedicated to Heart of Midlothian Football Club. One more step along the road to potential history after victory on Monday night against Rangers by 2 goals to 1. My voice is not what it could be, but that's what happens when you try to do an on the whistle outside Diggers at midnight and get accosted by the two men alongside me. First of all, Mr. Scott McIntosh, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I feel all right. I feel like we've got to put a wee bit of a disclaimer here, given how monumentous last night was. You kind of feel like we should be approaching this with just absolute enthusiasm, try to match the energy that the players had in the second half. I think it's fair to say, through
Both of
various
us.
different reasons, some of it alcohol based for you guys, me going home late and having to get up early for work this morning. I feel like we're all hanging a little bit in our own ways. So if the energy's feeling a bit low, trust me, it's not it's not because we're not absolutely giddy at the 40 wrapping up this league title over the next couple of games. It's just how much yesterday took out of us and the subsequent yeah, let's just call it a celebration. Let's say
Yeah.
that was a huge win last night, and I don't think we should be downplaying it now. We're right there, the finishing line's in front of us, and I think we should actually celebrate that fact that we've even got to that stage. And let's face it, we've pretty much wrapped up second. I think that's a big deal given how often Rangers and Celtic have been 1 or 2 points off us since December, January time. I think that's definitely something to celebrate because we've talked a lot about patchy form, but the last 3 games, you could say 4 games because Livingston probably should have won that game, but 10 points out of 12, considering 3 of those fixtures are against top 6 teams. We've hit form at the right time.
Laurie Dunsire, if this is what we're like after victory over Rangers, but still with 3 games to go, what are we going to be like if we are to win the league? Good evening, welcome, and salutations and everything else to welcome you to the podcast because obviously last week you took the huff that you weren't properly introduced. Hello.
Hello. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, yeah, it was a late one last night, and although I had a free day today because I'd planned ahead, I completely wasted that. Didn't catch up on sleep. Didn't do anything
You
productive.
didn't, hold on. You did not waste it. Tell everyone what you did. It
I've
wasn't
just
wasted.
sat watching content from the game or the aftermath of the
That's not
game
wasting it.
pretty much all day. But like I was saying before we came on, I didn't even do any real analysis. I'm just watching people's reactions and the goals again and the Colin Chisholm singing again. And but to be fair, regardless of that, I do find that I very quickly am back to anxiety after games right now because I'm just there's only about 5 minutes of me enjoying a win, and then it start to get anxious about the next game and just wanting that to come around. Because of last night, it did last a bit longer. It got maybe 5 hours rather than 5 minutes. But today it's all thinking about Motherwell now, the next game. And I don't know what's more stressful, is thinking about actually us doing it or thinking about us not doing it at this point, because both things are going to be just as emotional, but just one of them in a particularly awful way compared to the other. So yeah, last night was good. The game was very good in the end. Certainly the cliched game of two halves. It was great to have you over and out with us afterwards. Scott as well, who, yes, not drinking alcohol, but I feel like Scott is like starting to get drunk by proxy or something because he was starting to. The longer the night went on, he was like the language was getting shocking. He was just dropping letter bombs everywhere. We even say which
Uh,
letters.
I do
And
recall for some reason I went on some tangent about Joe Caulfield being a hippie,
I had to
calling her a
clarify to
see you
people. I
next
was like,
Tuesday.
by the way,
Uh,
he's drinking alcohol too. Just imagine if he hits the booze if we win the league. So yeah, it was a good evening. It was a good night. There was a lot of good people there, and it's not just me. You can feel that tension because it's so close, and everyone's just like, imagine if we do it. And I actually get quite. I was getting emotional a few times today thinking about it. If we do it, it's going to be incredible. But then you have to like try and stop yourself because we're not there yet. We're not there. And it doesn't matter what we think, obviously. We're not going to impact it whether we say we've definitely won it or we've definitely not. It's McInnes and the players, and they've kept with that approach of one game at a time. And I think they genuinely, I don't think it's just for show either. I think that seems to very much be the mentality, is take each game one at a time. And that's what they have to do, because as close as we are, things could easily swing another direction. And I would be surprised if both us and Celtic won every game that's left. So it's just to make sure that we do our bit. But yeah, thank you for coming over, Mark, because it was very enjoyable, and now we just can't wait till Saturday night.
I want to just touch on something you said there about the emotion. I stayed at Tynecastle Hotel last night, and speaking to people last night, speaking to people this morning in and around Tynecastle, I just went for a pint or 2 pints at the Tynecastle Arms today by myself, just sat at a quiet bar. Some old boys there, had a great conversation. And so many people mentioned emotion. An old guy came up to me, he goes, I didn't greet, son. He says, but fuck me, I was crying last night. He says, I don't know what brought it on, but it's just, I can't explain it. And then he went on to talk about how he was there in 1960, he was there in 1965. And then there's so many people, I must have spoken to about 7 or 8 people today who they started to cry either in some points. And it sounds daft to say this. I got emotional after the game as well. Scott, were you someone who is affected emotionally by Heart of Midlothian Football Club to the extent that it looks like you're cutting onions? Does that resonate with you, the number of people today who have admitted that they did shed a tear?
Aye. I'd say there was two moments for me last night, probably directly after Shankland scores, because then it just becomes so real. Everything that we've talked about now, probably since around, let's face it, I think Kilmarnock, I think that 3-0 game at Kilmarnock was when we first started having loose, kind of almost just jovial discussions around the possibility of winning the league. And then you beat Celtic, Rodgers leaves, you take a dip. We then beat Celtic and Rangers again round about Christmas time, you take another dip. So I think there's been so much talked about it that when Shankland scores, it becomes really real. Like it is that moment where you're like you can see the finishing line. So I think that moment kind of caught me a bit, and then it was probably at the final whistle, but not right at the final whistle. It was maybe a couple of minutes after that where players are starting to make their way around the pitch. You can see how connected the whole squad is. There's guys like Elton Kabangu, Borshkovink, people who really don't need to be there, but clearly there is a connection within the full squad that everyone's there cheering them on and cheering on every kick. And then you start to sort of take stock of people that are standing and sitting round about you. And I think that's when it starts to well up again and you start to get quite emotional. And then you come out the ground and you're bumping into old workmates, old schoolmates, and it just everyone's hugging each other. There's that sort of groundswell of emotion again. So it happens. It's like 2 or 3 times in a very short space of time where I felt like I was getting caught up in it, and I was fine once I headed up the road and that, and the crowds kind of dispersed a little bit. You kind of sort of control yourself and compose yourself a little bit. But I mean, I've got no hang-ups and like admitting on here that I'd be very surprised if I was the crying if they do it. Because again, I think it's that it's not just a season of trying, it's everything that comes historically, either through your generation or even previous generations. I was only 14 coming up to 15 when we won the cup in '98. But I cried at that because the you could feel the tension and the anxiety for dads, uncles and brothers and older friends and that. So I think because of that it'll be a little bit similar this time. I was only 3 year old when '86 happened, so I don't have any of those scars, but there's clearly still a few people that do. And I think there will be a bit of a feeling, there'll be the excitement of winning it, but I think they'll almost feel like a few other people have banished some ghosts.
One thing that kind of struck me, Laurie, about last night, about Hibs and about Motherwell, but we went a goal down in each of them. I never panicked, and that's weird. And I just think there's something different this season. I don't even worry about who we're playing. I just trust Hearts. They trust themselves. That's different. Why?
I think the mentality of this team is has been absolutely incredible. I think whatever happens in the final three games, I think you've got to give a huge amount of credit to Derek McInnes first and foremost. I know there's a lot made of Tony Bloom, and quite rightly, he's put some money into the club. We've got access to obviously a proven system, which people forget as well goes beyond just recruitment. This is analysing your current players. It's analysing opposition, etc., which is partly why I think Tony Bloom was quite bullish at the start of the season. I think looking at the data and the analytics of certain opposition teams that we were up against as well as our own. But I think this season it's more on McInnes, given we're still in that transitional period. There's a lot of players here that won't be here long term. Some because they'll go into bigger and better things, and some because they won't. And this might be the pinnacle for them. But I think the way McInnes has managed a giant squad, a lot of players who are here already, I think that is the key thing here. And I think the big thing, and I was saying this last night when we were chatting in the pub actually, that the first half of the season, not that it takes care of itself, but you've got that. You've got your best team often is fitter and more available. It tends to be so your preferred players are all there. Things are bouncing, things are going well, but often the testing time is maybe the second half of the season, especially for a team where traditionally Hearts haven't had the strength and depth of the likes of Rangers or Celtic, because that's when that's when injuries start kind of coming up. That's when the suspensions kick in, and that's when you're having to call upon your backup players who often maybe aren't good enough to step up, or if you haven't managed that squad well enough, not that they're not, they're professionals. Not that they're not going to come and chuck a game, but if your player is demotivated, doesn't want to play for that manager, wants out, then you're not going to get the same out of him as you would as someone who's still part of that squad. So I think, the likes of Frankie Kent, Blair Spittle, especially recently coming in, players who've had to sit in the sidelines, bide their time, could easily been very frustrated about it. I think a lot of us would feel that maybe Derek McInnes could have used some of them more often. But they've sat and then they've come in and they've done a job. And they're not suddenly world beaters, don't get me wrong, but I think the way they've stepped up and you can see they're fighting for that manager. They believe in him. And after the game, I think you mentioned Cabangu, Scott, as well. I would not blame Cabangu for feeling like, what am I doing here? What this is awful. Didn't even get a shout when Shankland was out, even off the bench, pretty much. But he was buzzing at Easter Road. You could see when we got that win, and he was out there at the end as well. So I think fostering that team spirit and that attitude, it comes from Derek McInnes, because I'm like that. When you hear him, you just want to listen to him. I can't imagine people in a dressing room. I've got Derek McInnes talking and they're not listening intently. They're not buying into that, because he's an inspiring kind of guy. And the way he talks, he sounds like he knows what he's talking about, and he believes, and that belief must pass on to them. So I think this season, I don't think it'll necessarily be as much on the manager long term for Hearts. I think it's part of this project, but I think this season McInnes is the key guy. I think that is the thing. It's there's a lot of things about timing, a perfect storm. But I mean, even you look at the team. Was it 5 Scots started and a couple came off? And I know that doesn't really matter nationality wise, but I think
I did tell McCoist on Talk Sport this morning. He said with Rangers having none in the starting 11,
yeah,
he said that's one of the reasons. He said you've got to have an identity at a football club,
and I think they get it.
Identity.
Yeah, and you get it. Scott's quite right. You see the players coming around at the end, that connection there. It's not. It does come. We had Rudy Scatchell on the pitch at halftime. There's someone who got it and bought into it, but it's never quite as easy. If you come from another country, it's UK culture, Scottish culture, and football is very different to other countries. So it's not as easy. Whereas your Kingsleys and your Shanklands, they've been around the club for a long time, but they've also been around Scottish football for a long time. They know what Hearts are about. They know what Tynecastle's about. And Derek McInnes, if you fed someone who came in the lines, what to say. If you got a Hearts fan to speak to, if you got Liam Corbett to speak to the new Hearts manager and go, right, here's the kind of things you should say.
Oh my goodness.
Here's the things to say. maybe he was. Maybe this is what's been happening. Here's the things to say that'll get the Hearts fans on side. And McInnes basically ticked all those boxes. He's saying that it's all about Tynecastle. He he said all the right things. And he knows. I think he
Got it.
believes it as well. I think he's been dying to get this job for a while. I
Yeah,
think it's a
yes.
great fit. So that was a long-winded way of me saying Derek McInnes.
Do you know what? We've started off in a kind of serious tone, which is the total dichotomy of that ramble at midnight outside Diggers, whatever the hell it's called. Um, I
Come on,
was going to do that.
stateside. I know you're not over here very often, but you still know the difference
No,
between the
I
pubs.
know. Yeah, we're outside Diggers. I was actually going to do that on the whistle because that's what it's called. And then I suggested after we have our meal that we do it then. And it was at midnight. We still hadn't done it, but I wanted to do it and I wanted to do it. So we did start off rather seriously. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to look back at the Rangers game. We're going to preview the Motherwell game as well. It wasn't it great last night, Scott, to be part of the Laurie Dunsire fan club everywhere we went. It's like, it's Laurie Dunsire.
Guys
It
from
was
Belgium and
amazing,
everything, eh? It was like it was
incredible.
international love for
Wow,
him.
No,
in the presence of
there
greatness.
was plenty of shouting for Mr. Donaldson.
I know I'm Mr.
Don't be messing
McIntosh.
around. But yeah,
Fantastic.
for those who haven't watched the On the Whistle one before you move on, yeah, we were Scott and I were meant to come out and do our bit, but there was the two lads from Pennycook there, so we were like, let's just send them instead. Just go and see your
Is that what I didn't even know? Is
yeah,
that what happened?
yeah. We told them. We told me
You
Scott like
pricks.
we're not gonna go there. We're meant to go. You go. I think they made a mess with them. We told them to go out and say that one's Laurie Dunsire, one's Scott McIntosh, but I think they came out and said they're from Heart Standard or something. But anyway, so that was
So,
Scott and I sent some subs instead, and we
randoms.
just stood at the bar.
Indeed. Yeah. So have a watch of that if you haven't yet. The very belated on the whistle. That was John Beaton giving an extra what 4.5 hours of added time until Rangers scored last night. We haven't got a name, haven't got a title yet for this podcast. At halftime, it was either going to be one of two things. It was going to be cheating beaten, or it was going to be rope a dope, because I was hopeful that if Hearts were to win, that it was just let Rangers think you're shite in the first half and then go and smash them in the second half. Then we thought greeting beaten, but we don't know what we're going to go with yet. So we'll see what happens over the next 45 minutes or so. You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald Signs, offering creative sign and print solutions since the 1950s. It's kind of tradition now to start with the team and Mr. Scott McIntosh's thoughts on the starting 11. And most importantly, with this conversation, Scott, the formation and the tactics. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, when we saw that Chesnikov was starting, straight away you're trying to think, well, we all know that Derek McInnes is someone who likes to analyse what the opposition are potentially going to do and try and make sure that threat's negated. So the inclusion of Chesnikov was a a bit of a strange one because we weren't quite sure where that was going to fit in to try and subdue what we probably all expected Rangers would do after the Motherwell game. I sort of mentioned last week that I felt that performance and result probably would have spooked them back into something more similar to a 4-3-3 rather than the sort of 4-2-2-2 that they've been playing for the last 2 or 3 months. So there was an element of trying to spend the first 5-10 minutes figuring out what Chesnikov's role would be. If I'm honest, there was times where he was quite central. There was times where he was kind of floating in for the left. He wasn't really on the left very often. I think we could see by just how much work Stephen Kingsley was having to do up and down that left flank in the first half. So straight away you could see that there was a numerical advantage that Rangers had where it started off as a bit of a 3 against 2 in the central area. But even when we asked Chesnikov or Shankland to try and sort of cover in there, you could then see Rangers would make the numerical advantage show further up the park with Moore, as he predominantly likes to do, coming in off the left and playing quite narrow as a 10. So it was turning in for a 3 against 2 into then a 4 against 3 as it progressed up the pitch. So it didn't really matter what Beningame and Leonard done. They were pretty much outnumbered for large spells of that first half. I think the saving grace, and you talked about this earlier, Mark, about not being too concerned about going a goal down, was that for all their territorial sort of advantages in the first half, Rangers didn't really trouble us a lot. And we talked about this at length last night about half time came at a good time for Hearts. I think Hearts, particularly in the last 10, 15 minutes of that half, probably played for a 1-0 and to just get back in and regroup. I think Rangers at times were panicking with their final ball, and I think they were quite conscious that they're not a 90-minute team and wanted to get that second goal before half time. So as much as a lot of Hearts fans were bemoaning the lack of stoppage time at the end of the first half and use that as another excuse
I
to
was
have a
more
go
than
at John
happy it was
Bean.
only one.
Yeah, I think we all agree that we were quite happy that it was just 1 minute. We felt that there was a change that needed to be made.
Yep.
Derek McInnes probably knew that for a good 10, 15 minutes, to go up until half time as well. So I think that came at a good time for us. You mentioned that thing about as well not being too worried about Rangers going 1-0 in front, and I think the reason for that is out with Motherwell. I haven't really seen too many teams this season, including us, that are capable of putting a 90-minute performance together. I think Hearts, Celtic, and Rangers have all sort of toiled at times for that. I think last night was another example of that. You could talk about that a couple of times when we've played Motherwell earlier this season as well. So, yeah, I think that's why when we do go a goal down, there is obviously there's the history there this season to show that we're more than able to come back from a goal down. But I think on top of that, you also know that a team like Rangers will just not last the full 90 minutes. So there was always that hope that if we could regroup at half time, we could make the necessary change. I think most people agreed Spittle for Chesnikov just seemed the most obvious solution in terms of getting us at least into a sort of midfield three. But there was a bit of another couple of tweaks as well that we can talk about that were also a little bit more surprising, but ultimately led to us getting the 3 points.
Okay, Laurie, let's reveal what Derek McInnes said at half time. And we're going to do that with Claudio Braga, who was asked afterwards and explained. Derek McInnes said to the players, quote, just straight up, man up a little bit. And then Claudio Braga explained they were winning every duel, and that's on us. The pressure was also not right, so we just changed a little bit, as Scotty was saying, with Spitz coming on. It gave us a little bit more ball. I would say Benny and Mark started having more touches, and then everybody else started flowing a little bit better. And Scott, you've already mentioned that he probably realised after half an hour, maybe even before that it wasn't working. But he decided not to make a change, stay compact, and try and make yourself hard to beat, get in 1-0 down, and then make the changes. But Laurie, that comment that was made by Derek McInnes, just man up a little bit, get into this game, put more intensity and pressure on it. I didn't think he would be a ranter or a raver in that instance, and that seems to be what it was. What is this, game number 35 of the season? You don't need to start doing something that you haven't done and spook the players. So Claudio Braga saying, just man up a little bit. Is that what you expected Derek McInnes to say?
Yeah, to an extent. I think he mentioned along kind of reminding them of where they're at and getting that belief back again. And I think Scott was, I won't repeat too much of it because he was bang on with it, but there was that feeling in the half, and I think it was around the time that Shankland had committed the foul and got a booking, and he had a little sort of impromptu team meeting on the pitch. And
Yeah.
I'm guessing here, I don't know for a fact, but I feel like the message there was almost, we just need to calm down, see out this half, keep the heads, because sometimes in games it isn't often it's often just momentum in a game, and it doesn't come down to deep tactical things here. And I think Rangers had the momentum, and it wasn't really going to shift, I don't think, until we had a proper time to regroup at the break. And Scott's bang on. There was a point towards the end of the half I felt like Rangers were getting almost desperate to try and make the most of it, because I think they felt like at 1-0 that game can easily turn. If they got a second, it's a different ball game, because then we have got a bit of an uphill task. So I thought towards the end of the half they were really trying to push without really. They never created much throughout the game actually. And if it wasn't for a wee deflection of Steinwender, they don't even get that opener. But they were just trying to put the pressure on a bit more, and we soaked it up. And I think I love the way Derek McInnes explains um, a football game and explains his decisions. I think he does it in a way that, again, it's very engaging, but he makes it sound so simple. And I quite like that. It makes me very reassured. He reassures me a lot of the time when I listen to him explaining things. And it was
Do you
just,
think every manager would be like that if they won most weeks?
it, yeah, maybe come back to me if we've have a
I
real,
think there's an element of that though sometimes, like when this isn't me trying to downplay what McInnes has done in one, but I just find it interesting about because I think we've said before sometimes we've had a lot of sympathy for managers when they get asked about something so soon after the game's just finished because
yeah,
they won't have had much time to digest it themselves. And I do wonder, is it just a case of if they're winning, then everything sounds gravy, and if they're not, then they could be saying the same thing, but it just doesn't quite wash or sort of resonate or land in the same way. So it is a funny one, but I do look generally, I do agree with you. Like I think the way he talks about what he's done to either set up or change in a game, even in situations where I've been like, I don't know why you done it. Once he then explains it, I'm like, well, I still don't think that was the right thing to do, but I'm
yeah.
just a fan, and I understand at least where he was coming from. I think he's always done a good job of that.
I kind of slightly disagreed on not in like a negative sense as such. I think he talked about there was no change to nothing tactical, nothing to the system at all. It was just personnel. And I certainly didn't, and I don't believe that was there was because I did feel a bit sorry for Chesnikov because I kind of understood what McInnes was trying to do. I was a bit nervous about it when I saw it, but fair play to him. It's one of these things where people often it annoys me, and I was probably guilty of it in the past, to be honest, when I didn't really take enough interest in maybe his teams and what he was doing because it wasn't Hearts. But there's this kind of like negative defensive type of thing, and actually sometimes McInnes goes too forward thinking, and this was another moment. Like there's a few games this season where we've went with four up, and it's basically like what are we doing? And he's admitted at least once that it was the wrong decision, but he's put three forwards on there basically to try and I think he wanted to try and get up in Rangers' faces and take the game to them right from the off. And first few minutes, you kind of could see maybe how it might work, but it just didn't. Rangers very quickly settled into the game and made that kind of extra man count because Chesnikov he wasn't a man he wasn't in the midfield really. He was floating everywhere, and I could work out what we were trying to do with him. He was kind of number 10, then he was often making runs through the middle as a nine. So I just didn't seem to work. Where the Spittle is a bit more disciplined in there, and he's a really clever player. And again, it's something we spoke about after the game. I think what Blair Spittle brings you, yes, similar to maybe Shankland, he doesn't. He's not got legs. He's not fast. And it's if Blair Spittle was lightning quick, he'd probably be a higher level than Hearts because he's a really smart footballer. His positioning, what he does with the ball, and I think it just gave us a bit more composure in the middle, and it made such a difference. I thought he was terrific in the second half, off the ball
It
stuff as
was.
well. The way he makes little runs just to try and open up space. You see he had that in his head when we built up for the equalizer, which we'll get to as well. So I think, yes, I get it. You're taking one man who's maybe central out of the game, and you just put another man who's kind of central into the game. But it's a very different setup with Spittle in there in the midfield than Chesnikov. And honestly, I don't know if Chesnikov is going to be good or not for Hearts yet. It's hard. I think it's still hard to judge. We've not seen anything to say that he's going to be a great player for Hearts, but at the same time, I don't think. I think yesterday would be a hard one to judge him on because I think we kind of got the setup wrong, and not that he was hung out to dry, but it was. I just think it was never going to work for him the way that game went in the first half.
Mm.
But Spittle, a reliable player, and I think you can move on and talk about things in the second half. But I thought that change was sensible, and I think Derek McInnes. It's just you've only got what 10 minutes maybe to speak to them by the time everyone's in, settled down before they go back out. So there's no point. There's no point in screaming at them for 5 minutes, is there? Because what's that going to do?
Yeah.
So I think you probably made that little tweak. I think it was maybe a little bit more tactical than he's saying afterwards, but I think it's mainly get them to find their confidence again because that's often what happens at the second half. If you start again, it's almost like a reset on the momentum of the game. That momentum's flowing against you, and sometimes it happens in a game and it surprises you. It kind of starts again for the second half. It's like who's going to grasp that momentum? And I think right from the first few minutes, even the first 60 seconds, of the way we went forward, you could kind of see that momentum shift. And although this Rangers team, I think probably on paper, quality wise, they're probably the best in the league. Not necessarily in balance, but in terms of the quality players they've got on their day. But when it comes to, we're talking about Hearts bottle, Hearts mentality, 19 points won from losing positions. I think Rangers are the other end of the scale when it comes to that. When things start going against them and things shift, I think there's a big mentality question there. And Danny Röhl's got a big job in his hand to kind of shift that. I think that's probably a bigger challenge for them than it is in terms of maybe technical ability of the players they've got.
But we don't give a fuck about Rangers.
No,
We're
we
here to
don't.
talk about
Well,
Hearts.
actually, I
And we're
do.
gonna,
I'm a Rangers fan on Sunday, so actually, I do
we
give
are.
quite a big
That's
fuck about
Sunday.
Rangers.
That's Sunday. Last night we didn't. I'm going to park the on the field chat for a second, and I'm glad you mentioned how there was a kind of reset button pressed at half time, and it was like, okay, let's go and do the job. Hearts fans were unbelievable last night. That is as good as I have heard them. It's as loud as I've heard them or been part of, whether it's commentating or been there. And even at the start of the second half, when the Hearts song was played, it maybe didn't have the same gusto as when the wonderful Colin Chisholm sang it pre-game, but the Hearts fans were still behind them. And before we talk about the first chance of the game for Hearts in the 48th minute, I want to take the piss out of myself by saying to Scott McIntosh about the fans, discuss.
I think it's very easy for us to respond in that way last night because the trust has been built over the course of a sort of 9 or 10 month spell. So we've had those games, Tannadice, Hibs away recently, Motherwell at home on a couple of occasions, fighting back twice, going behind at home to Celtic. There's been so many occasions where the team have responded well in adversity that I think it's only fair that we stick with them to the very last minute because they've proved time and time again that it's worth doing that and sticking in with them. So
And
that's the
Hearts
very
fans have done that
least.
throughout.
Yeah, that's the very least they should get for the fans, given how they've performed over the season. So I wasn't overly surprised about that. And again, I think I didn't get the feeling that there was a lot of anger or frustration at halftime. It just felt like the anxiety just built up a little bit more, didn't it? That's what it was. It was just that feeling of anxiety that a lot of the fans had pre-game about how big this game was. Obviously, losing the first goal just amplifies that. So I think there was a lot of anxiety, but I think people sensed that when the players came out and the song came on, it was almost time just to switch on, and just like the players did, almost just you know wipe the slate clean for the second half and just start again. And thankfully, the way the players applied themselves in the second half, it was really easy to get on board with it because we were at it for that first minute. And again, like Laurie's mentioned this, there was a little bit more to it than Spittle coming on. They go to free at the back. Steinvender picks up Moore pretty much on a man-to-man marking job to the extent where he follows him into the Rangers box at one stage, which I think was bemusing certain sections of the supporters to where he was going. Kazidis then switched over into a sort of right wing back position. And I felt what that really allowed, which didn't happen in the first half because we were asking Shankland to drop in at times and help sort of sit on Rangers' defensive midfielders, was it allowed Shankland and Braga to go really 2-on-2 up front. I felt like there was a lot more close contact between Shankland and Giga and Fernandez compared to the first half, where I felt like it was Braga that we were looking for that ball. So straight away, I felt like there was just a bit more of an attack and outlet because we'd sorted things out behind the front two. It gave them that sort of that license to not worry about, picking up extra men in midfield. Spittle was there to help out with that, and we were putting Steinvender on Moore. So I think if nothing else, it just gave the front two that little bit of freedom to express themselves and be involved a little bit more than they had done in the previous 45.
I was so pleased that Steinvender played so well. 13 defensive duels, 4 out of 4 tackles won, 5 clearances, 5 ground duels won, 3 aerial duels won, and no fouls conceded whatsoever. What's changed, Laurie, with Michael Steinvender? Is it simply he's got more confidence because he's playing in a position that he much prefers to play in?
I'll come into Michael Steinway in a moment. I just want to quickly go back on the Colin Chisholm thing that you mentioned because I thought it was fantastic at the start of the game, and I was really pleased actually that um, I was messaging our production group, and for those of you who don't that are not aware, when we're doing the Hearts TV and it's a live game, we just get the Sky pictures, so we're kind of at the mercy of what Sky show. So if they want to do wide shots at certain points, that's what we show. We don't get to control if we go to kind of close ins of anyone or we do the fan shot. So it generally means, when the teams come out, Sky go to the wide shot to do the lineup. So that's when we did the lineups. And I was kind of saying, is there any way we can get around that? Because I would rather not be doing here's the Hearts formation again, because I think it would be better today to have everything on the fans and Colin Chisholm sing the song. I don't need me talking about the changes or whatever. I'm like, oh, we can't, whatever Sky are doing, we're doing. But then Graham, who's obviously an announcer, told me before the game, he's like, Sky have asked for um to get an audio hookups to properly get Colin singing before the game. I was like, well, that's interesting. So I take it they're not doing it. And I spoke to Ian Crocker and he said, oh, I'm doing my teams before the players go out, which is completely, I'm pleasantly surprised at that because obviously the Sky formula is the typical formula. Obviously, players come out, little introduction, and then it goes to wide shots and you quickly go through the formations. That's how it works. That's it. But to completely change that, I was quite surprised because I think that's quite big, especially for Sky, who kind of generally just follow the usual setup for the Scottish games. So it allowed me to do that as well. And basically just, I think I said something like, and now I'm going to hand over to over 17,000 Hearts fans and Colin Chisholm and just let that play out. I thought it was brilliant. And it's obviously Derek McInnes himself has been keen to make it happen again and get Colin back. And I was quite emotional watching it again. I must have watched it a good 9, 10 times today, just the intro song. I think I messaged you guys as you hear his voice when it says follow the hearts. The last time he says follow the hearts and it's going to the crowd and they're all singing. And I just thought it was brilliant. And it just set the tone. Because then when you played that version of the Heart song again at halftime and at the end, everyone just kind of, it was like muscle memory. It's like, well, we'll sing along again. So I thought that was brilliant. I thought Colin was fantastic. And
I
that
do
was,
hope, on a lighter note, while we're talking about Colin and his performances recently, I do hope now that when we start singing the song, that everyone gestures to the other crowd and just goes, "Ha!" I hope
ah,
everyone picks that up. That's got to be included now. That should definitely be the way that we sing that song now.
I like you because he talked about it on the podcast, didn't he? Because when I always listen to that song, it was always like a huh, rather than a. I didn't realize until there was a new thing, but it was when he first sang on the pitch, and I was like, "Oh, he's saying like ha to them," but I always just thought it was just a little huh in the original version. But no, I did like that. He's also got to get used to the volume because obviously I think his son mentioned as well that he actually got the timing wrong at the start, which is fine.
Yeah.
We'll let him off. But circling back, because I know my job now that you're the one who hosts is to do the Mark Donaldson tangents, so I'm just trying to fill that role
Oh,
properly.
just whilst we're still talking about Colin, sorry, that's twice now I've done this. Did anyone notice what a Celtic fan called him under the
Oh,
video? Somebody called
Rod
him
Stewart.
Prod Stewart, which I thought was quite funny. Like I thought it was
Fair play.
that I was like, that's quite funny.
Fair play. When it comes to Michael Steinbender, what's changed? The lighter answer to that is whatever happened with that head knock. I don't know if Steinbender came to and thought it was Paolo Maldini because after the head knock, I just thought he was supercharged. He just seemed to be on a mission. He was just
Brilliant.
winning everything. I don't know, there's something about that headband. I don't know if people turn into prime Terry Butcher just because that's what happened back in the day, but I thought he was brilliant. But on a serious note, I think Michael Steinbender's always been he's been a very capable defender. I think he's a good player. Is he fantastic? Is he going to be Hearts' first pick defender going forward? No, he's not. But I think he's he's a sensible player. He's an intelligent player. He's actually pretty good on the ball. As centre backs in the Scottish Premiership go. Has he struggled at times when he's been played as an out and out right back? Yes, because he's not that comfortable there because he's a centre back. But on his day, I think he's a great player. And I thought if you're asking him to just defend in positions he's comfortable in, he's good at it. He uses the ball sensibly. So I think in the right circumstances, I think Michael Steinbender's a good player, and I think he's had on the whole a very good season. Unfortunately, yes, he did have a few very bad games, and that seemed to. I thought it was laboured a little bit the focus on him because there's other players who've had pretty bad games. And it's just one of those things. I mean, Claudio Braga, I didn't think he was great against Rangers. And as Derek McInnes said at the BFA Awards, he was rotten every time against Hibs. And he's right. He just didn't turn up for the derbies, but thankfully he did turn up for pretty much every other game. So this happens with players who have bad games. But I think Michael Steinwender, especially if he's right side of a back three, which I have to admit, I struggle sometimes in games to keep track of our shape. And yesterday was one of those where it's like, wait, we're three again now, aren't we? We're three. We're not
Mhm.
four. There's a few times when it caught me by surprise, and I was actually not 100% where we were at, which must be difficult for your defender. But I think if Michael Steinbender's right of a back three, I think that's where he's very comfortable. And I think if you have him there, you get the most out of him. Can he cover right back? Yes. It's not his best position though. So I was really pleased for him. I thought he put a shift in. Use of the ball was good as well. And I think he does what's asked of him. So I think he's always been a decent player. And just another one who's done his bit this season and hopefully done his bit for something which is going to be monumental come Jesus has recording next weekend, pretty much.
Frightening,
At the
isn't it?
latest. At the
Um,
latest. I think Tony
you,
Brown said this as well. Although we all know it, it's like Hearts have now guaranteed at the very least they will have a title decider against Celtic. And that would be the worst case scenario because even if we lose our
yep,
games, they win theirs,
yep.
we would have a chance to beat them and potentially leapfrog them. So worst case scenario now is we'll be going to Celtic Park with a chance to win the title there. That's the worst case scenario at this point,
Well,
which is pretty mental to think with 3 games to go.
it's when you put it into that context, where we've been, what we've been through, where we now are, where we could be, and to think we're recording this on Tuesday evening, in 8 days' time at 10 p.m. If results go our way this weekend and next Wednesday, we could be sitting here in 8 days' time talking about Heart of Midlothian Football Club, Scottish Premiership champions. But we're not yet.
Mate,
There's plenty
mate,
of work
if
still to be done.
8 days time on the Wednesday, I will not be recording a podcast if we've just won the league.
Oh, no chance. No, no, no
just
chance.
just so
I
you're
just mean,
just so you're clear.
and I'm in 8 days' time, whenever I'll be in
It'll,
Philadelphia at the golf.
it'll be about
And by the way,
14 days time by the time we get around to that.
probably that might be a very delayed and belated on the whistle slash next podcast. I was of the opinion and thought that you and Murray, like every other year, him and I would be at the PGA Championship. And that's where I'm heading on Sunday and was fully expecting to do our usual, meet up, get the hire car, put on the Jambo Tribe and listen to Gorgie Road and Henry Smith as we fly along the freeway or highway or interstate. And then the little bastard last night drops the bombshell that he's told his bosses at the Guardian, I'm not going to the golf. Hearts could win the title. So his bosses have agreed to allow him to stay in Scotland to cover the title race and get someone else to do the golf.
You're just
So
annoyed you didn't think of
I am. There's nothing I can do about it.
that.
You spoke about Steinvender, and I want to talk about Kizaridis because I saw a post that he put out on Instagram earlier, and it was a fantastic post. It's a picture of him with his newborn son in his arms, and he said, "Yesterday was more than just a game. For the first time, I walked onto the pitch holding my son in my arms. A moment I'll carry forever, not for the result, but for him, for the little boy who's already changed my whole world without even knowing it. One day, I'll tell him all about this day, but yesterday, I just held him close and I lived it. 3 to go." Scott, in the second half, he's had a brilliant shot that's hit the post, and Kingsley has followed up with the equalising goal. Are we starting, and it might take until next season now, are we starting to see more of the Kizaridis of earlier in the season, or is there still a fair bit to go?
I think there's still a fair bit to go, but what I would add to that is that I have a great deal of sympathy for him, and I think it mirrors what happened with Barry Mackay in his second season at Hearts. I think sometimes players can, and especially in this league where you play teams sometimes 4 or 5 times a season, I think firstly it can become very easy for defenders to suss you out as a winger, and then on top of that, managers to decide to double up on you. And I remember when Barry Mackay obviously had that really productive first season at Hearts, we never really sorted out the right side of the wing the following year. Josh Ginnelly was either injured or he was being used as a sort of central player. So Barry Mackay was getting doubled up on, which you should think in hindsight, why doesn't that create space elsewhere? But we just never seem to take advantage of that. I think for Kizaridis, I think Milne being injured's been a big blow. Uh, because I do think there is a partnership there of sorts, and I think Milne will make more of those types of lung busting runs, which again will take the attention of at least one player and allow Kizaridis to kind of sometimes match up in a one-to-one situation and want to cut and seal. So I do think he's missed Milne. I think there's been times this season when Shankland's been injured where he's missed that link from forward to the wide areas as well. I think we've talked about this before about what do invented wingers want from their strikers? Because let's face it, they're not looking to hit the byline and cut the ball back for a sort of penalty box striker. What they're really looking to do is find intelligent forwards that they can bounce the ball off of. So again, Shankland being replaced by Kabore, who's a different type of forward, that wouldn't have helped as well. And then you've just talked about it there, changing personal circumstances. Footballers are human, so there's going to be stresses that come with that as well. I think for the most part, even when his form's dipped over the last sort of 3 to 4 months, I think his work rate, bar 1 or 2 games, has still been really high. And let's face it, he wouldn't be playing every week if his work rate hadn't been there, because McInnes wouldn't have suffered that and let that go. So I think we've got to all agree that the work rate's still been there. And I thought there was glimpses of him being back on his best last night, particularly in the second half. I thought he was on it, and I think the fact that he had the confidence to swing at the ball with his left foot showed that, because that's not something he would have done at stages over the last couple of months.
You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald's Signs, offering creative sign and print solutions since the 1950s. The equalising goal scored by Stephen Kingsley after the aforementioned Alexandros Kizaridis strikes the post with a decent effort. It was Spittle picking up the ball, finding Kizaridis on the right, and the rebound falling perfectly for Stephen Kingsley, who slid the ball into an empty net. That came 5 minutes, Laurie, after Hearts created their first real chance of the game when Lawrence Shankland had an effort which was headed away by a Rangers player. Braga's effort just before the goal scored by Kingsley was well held by Butland. What is it about Hearts right now? Not so much going behind, because we've shown that we can come back. That's 19 points now that we've won after being behind. But what is it about Hearts that kind of shows you that you can feel that a goal is coming and we don't panic? Because you kind of knew at the start of the second half there was going to be a chance, the way Hearts pinned Rangers back a little bit. What's happened? Why is that feeling there when we've not had it for ever prior to this season?
It does help when you've got good attacking players there, when you've got two strikers who've scored almost 20 goals each in the season, albeit I didn't think Braga was as most effective in this particular match. But I think Shankland's a key part of that, both as captain and both as what he offers. And I think the way he's that link player, and we did have to, Scott was mentioning Kabore coming in, and it changed the way we play, and it's a really good point because it was like when Kabore and Braga first played together, and it was when he got chucked in, well, not chucked in, but he hadn't realised till I think late in the week that Shankland wouldn't play at Pataudry, and Braga, I think, kept playing like he was playing with Shankland. Kabore kept making runs, and Braga was expecting someone to kind of come in and link up with him rather than try and look for a through ball or a ball over the top. And it just didn't work. And I think with players like Kizaridis, with players like Braga, with Spittle, whoever it might be, having someone who takes up really intelligent positions, has a great touch, and just great awareness of what's going on around him. I think Shankland is the thing for me that links everything together. I think he has become just this Lynch, just this main man in the team. And I think he's grown into the captaincy as well. And I think that's the big thing for me. It's just Shankland's intelligence. And I don't want to kind of jump ahead, but I said I'm doing the Mark Donaldson role now, so I will. But like the way he takes that goal as well is just
Yeah.
unbelievable. The way he has to kind of curve his run and come back onto the ball on his weak left foot and somehow get that pace and accuracy on it. It's just phenomenal. But I'll let you get back to that because I think Kingsley is another man who gets that goal, not only to get into position, but it's not an easy finish, actually. The way the ball comes at him very quick, very easy to miscue that and it goes wide or it skies over the bar. So I think to control it is not as easy as maybe it looks because it happens so quickly. The ball comes back to him and it's almost like pinball. It's out to him and it's back in on goal. And I think he deserves a lot of credit because we have missed Harry Milne because Harry Milne's got an incredible edge on him, gets up and down that left side. Kingsley doesn't have that, unfortunately. It's just one of those things. But he is another smart footballer who uses what he has really well. And when Spittle plays in it, he plays him in. I thought Spittle overhit that to the byline for the Shankland goal. I thought that was running out. I didn't. I was surprised he actually went for it first, but he showed a real good turn of pace at that point to get and cut it back. So I think he's another one that I'm really pleased for. That was 180 appearances for Hearts, and I'll be honest, I didn't think we'd see much from him this season. I think I wouldn't have been surprised if we brought someone else in and moved him on if there was an option, and maybe that was the plan. No point speculating about that just now, but I just thought we'd be moving on to different things. And not that I don't like Stephen Kingsley, but I wasn't sure there was going to be a place for him regularly. But he's another who stepped in. And, I almost forget at the start of the season when we had our best run, he was actually left back because Milne was at right midfield. So I think he's another who I've been really impressed with. And again, it's almost like Hearts being the collective is the big thing with Hearts. And Kingsley's another one in there. So I think for me, Shankland is the big thing that you've always got that belief because of the way he links things up, even when he's not the one scoring or setting up the goals, drags players out of position, moves into dangerous positions, holds the ball up, allows other players to make runs or to kind of link with him. And everyone around him, I think, feeds off that. So whilst we've got Shanklin in there, anything can happen.
Laurie's just summed up the goal very well. I was the same, Scott. I thought that the pass from Spittle had been slightly overhit. I was in section T. Now you would normally be in section S, but you were playing musical chairs last night. But there was just a change in atmosphere after the goal from Stephen Kingsley. The first half returned. The atmosphere at the start, the pre-game atmosphere, that was Tynecastle. That was noise. Because the atmosphere dissipated in that first half, but that was because of the performance. It's very reactionary and totally understandable. Hearts fans got the team to where the team were at kick-off. They got them fired up. They were absolutely magnificent. The team didn't play great in the first half, so of course the atmosphere is going to suffer. But as we said, at halftime, the Hearts supporters kept going. They kept singing the song. That goal, we score at good times, Scott, and that goal after 53, it gave us plenty of time for the fans to get on board, for us to keep pushing forward. And 17 minutes later, with the fans still singing, that was quite the noise when that ball hit the back of the net, was it not?
Yeah, and sometimes I think the reason why, I mean, obviously there's the occasion itself and what it means to potentially beat one of your closest title rivals. So there's always going to be an eruption of noise. But I think also there is that it is out of nothing, the goal, isn't it? It's just, Kingsley just is trying to keep the ball in play and Shankland peels off his marker really well and just smashes it in before anyone really realises what's happened. And I think there's an element to Hearts where we have been quite ruthless in front of goal, but we aren't a team that need to create 10, 15 chances a game to get a couple of goals. You tend to find if we get 5 or 6 shots on goal, there's still a good chance we'll get a couple of goals. So I think because of that, we don't really always have what you'd call continuous sort of pressure on teams from a goal scoring opportunity point of view. I think there's times where we can be camped in teams' half because we press the game well and we get that territorial advantage. But I think sometimes that's why there's that eruption, because it has been not quiet, but it's just been motoring along quite nicely, and then all of a sudden Kingsley manages to keep the ball in and Shankland just bangs it in, and it's look. There's nobody else that's going to be flying on that plane potentially, Scotland, that scores that goal. There just isn't. Like, even for all the guys who are enjoying a good runny form down south, they're not that type of striker. And I get that obviously Steve Clarke's got, you would imagine, two favourites that have served him pretty well up to this point. They'll definitely be there. The other two spaces are up for grabs. There's obviously 3 or 4 players in the championship who are scoring goals as well just now. So it's not a stick on that Lawrence Shankland will be there. But I think for me, given that there could come a point where Scotland just need a goal in the last 10 minutes of a game, you've got to have them on the plane, even just for that scenario, even if you just need it in one match, because there's nobody else in that squad that I would rather stick my hat on, sort of scoring for us in that situation.
Laurie mentioned the PFA Awards earlier in the show. I was there on Sunday night, and Steve Clarke got up on stage to accept a special merit award, and he was asked about how many positions and places are there up for grabs, and he basically says people know now. I've got my favourites. I've got the ones that are loyal to me. I'll be amazed if Lawrence Shankland doesn't go. I think he should start in the first game against Haiti, because as you say, we don't have that player that can either score that goal, that striker. But
the reason why I won't have that conversation is the same reason I stopped asking about Kurjota playing for Hearts this season. It just becomes such a redundant conversation, because you know that the manager is so welded in to either a particular way of playing or a particular type of player.
Yeah.
And even although I agree with you 100%, Shankland should start that fixture when we should have the majority of the game,
Yes,
and it should be about scoring goals. He'll still go for a Shea Adams. He just will. It's just the way he's wired. And look, that still might work for him. Shea Adams has scored the bulk of his goals against, opposition that you'd expect to get chances against. But yeah, I think, I'm hoping you're right about Shankland, but there is a bit of me that worries about the press that, Ross Stewart, Ollie McBurney and that have been getting. George Hurst obviously is
McBurney's not going, we know
quite
that
a bit as well. But Ross Stewart's probably the one you worry about the most. Just because, again, he's a physical individual as well. So Clarke will like that aspect about him. You'd like to think it would be either or between Stewart and Hurst. But again, we know what people up here think of the English Championship. We've had it with Strachan in that in the past, where they put more stock into that than players playing well in the Premiership. So I'm hoping history doesn't repeat itself, but it really wouldn't surprise me either.
We'll keep that for the yet to be announced, because it probably won't happen. Tartan Scarves Around the Funnel podcast.
I'll not be fucking on that anyway.
We will now no longer be doing.
I'll still be celebrating Hearts winning the league.
As with Laurie. If anybody wants to do that with me, let me know. 73rd minute, Laurie Dunsire. What angle did you have? What kind of look did you have on Blair Spittle's attempt that Jack Butland saved brilliantly?
I didn't realise he saved it when it first happened, because it happened so quick. I thought it just flashed wide, because he hit it with some pace, and it wasn't until you saw the replay, it's like, oh, that is an outstanding save, because Blair Spittle hits it so sweetly, and he's brilliant at hitting the ball like that when it kind of comes towards him and he can come onto it with his right foot. He does it brilliantly with his kind of first time passes and with those shots at goal, and so unlucky. Incredible save from Jack Butland. And that would have just been sort of icing on the cake but I mean, the way the season's going, there's no danger we get a 2-goal lead in a game, then we can actually kind of relax at all. Because I know the logic. I know the logic is that we're great at defending these leads. We're used to it. We can see them out, and Rangers didn't really threaten that much. It doesn't matter, because it's only one goal, and I just need something stupid to happen out of your control for that to, some random 30-yarder suddenly flies in, or awful deflection or John Beaton finds a penalty from somewhere. So it's just the way the season's going. It'll probably be the same on Saturday, and then probably the same of even if we set up. I'm almost kind of forgetting if things go our way at the weekend. I probably won't dawn on until we get to the Falkirk game. We've actually still got to win this game, and it's probably only going to be a goal in it again. So the tension's going to keep going. But it was a brilliant shot, and it would have been nice for Blair Spittle to cap his performance with a goal, but couldn't get there. And it's interesting you're talking about Steve Clarke and Scotland talk, because I know he has his favourites, but and no disrespect to Grant Hanley because he's been sitting near me recently, and I wouldn't want to say it to his face, but if he is on that plane and Craig Halkett is not, I mean, someone's going to have to try and make that make sense to me, because
he served them for a number of years.
Just,
That's all it boils down to.
It's just, I mean, Halkett was absolutely, we know it, and I think Joel Skedd's probably still walking around Gorgie talking about his heading ability to whoever will listen at this point. But
best header of the football in the world, in fact, the solar system.
To be fair, I think he said he was only, did he say best in the world, or I thought he was second best in the world? I thought maybe
he changed it to top five.
Top five. But he is unbelievable in the air. And yes, it was just one of those, ball gets flung forward, and that's the desperation that Rangers got to, I think, in the second half. You do get worried in those moments because that's when chaos can kind of ensue, and that's why we put so many defenders on. But I didn't know if Danny Rule had a plan. I think it was just throw as many attacking players on as we could and then shell it forward. But that's almost like McInnes laps that up, and so does Craig Halkett. It's like, oh, you want to put the ball in the air towards our box? Well, we've got Craig Halkett. We've got Stuart Findlay as well, to be fair. I have to mention him, but Craig Halkett just like attacks everything. Clears the halfway line sometimes, I feel, as well, with his defensive headers. It's just, I thought he was one of those who was absolutely immense. And you would think teams would learn and be like, we'd probably be better trying to stretch them and maybe like find some little spaces to open up. But no, let's just shell it towards the box. And that's just walking right into what we were looking for. So, yeah, but I thought Halkett was fantastic.
It was weird what Rangers done, because it was like a mixture of two things. They tried to stretch the game again because they brought Romans on, who obviously gives them more from a left-back position. Broke Gassama on. But then, at the same point, totally undone all that work by then bringing on Asgard and saying, you get the ball for the centre-halves and you just lump it up to Miovski and Nadiri and Chermiti. So it's like, it was really weird substitutions, because it's like, well, which of the two are you doing here? Like, are you trying to stretch the game, or are you just going long? Because if you're just going long, it would have been just as well bringing on another centre-half and saying, just you join the other three up there. There was no point having Gassama and Robbins on by that stage.
It was Football Manager when this will be lost on Mark, but you're getting to the end of the game and nothing's working, so you just put your thing to all-out attack and just line up four forwards and just put everything to direct. You're like, just see what happens. I mean, might as well. The game's not going to give me a goal, so I might as well see if I can break it by just going stupidly direct and putting it. There was no real function or methodology behind it. It was just chuck the ball forward, and that's when you almost feel like you might as well do something random, like stick a centre back in there, because people don't know what to do with them. But
look at how many goals Fernandez has scored for Rangers this season. He's probably their second top scorer or third top scorer.
Because although Chermiti's big, he didn't want balls over the top.
Chermiti didn't want. He wasn't.
Not his head.
He wasn't wanting it. He wasn't wanting it with Halkett. And Miovski's not really that type of forward either.
He's not
either. No. It was just look. I know it's not a Rangers pod. It's just nice to have a laugh at their misfortunes from time to time, even as much as we are cheering them on Sunday.
Yep.
They did have a big chance, 76th minute, when Tavernier swings in a free kick. Swallow punches it away as far as Asgard, and it just seemed like that ball was in the air for an eternity before all the Hearts fans in the stadium who were holding their breath were able to exhale when it came off the crossbar. Apart from that, and you mentioned the subs that they brought on, I was surprised he took off Mikey Moore for Asgard. Scott Olsen should probably never have started.
It probably makes sense, so bringing off Moore if you're going to go direct and miss out the midfield.
But he was their biggest threat.
Why bring on Gassama and that's what I just didn't understand.
Nuts.
Like, anti-play Gassama right wing.
I don't want to trigger you. I don't
Madness.
want to trigger you because clearly 0% alcohol old mouth cider triggered you last night. I don't know if it's the sugar or what it was. You turned into an animal with a gob on you. The other one was, what was it? Chermiti, I think was a late chance, but we defended heroically. Let's try something here. The final whistle goes. Give me one word, each of you, if you wouldn't mind, as to how you were feeling when referee John Cheating, Greeting, Beaten blew his final whistle. Laurie.
Overwhelmed, emotional, relieved. I think relief is probably the biggest one for a
Hard
lot
to
of
pick
full-time.
one word, isn't it? So there's three: overwhelmed, emotional,
I think
and
relief.
relieved.
Relief
Yep, okay.
is the big one this season.
Probably. That's a good one. Scotty, same or different?
I think drained. I think the majority of the fans.
Yes.
I think the majority of the
That's a good
fans
one.
had been kicking every ball with the team after Shankland scored. And don't get me wrong, like you've already alluded to, Rangers only had one or two opportunities after that. But you always know, and again, I think this is historical scars. Rangers and Celtic in the past have always been adept at nicking either late draws or late winners out of nothing. So I think that always sticks with you as a football fan in Scotland. So I think it was more you're drained, then you're relieved. You're always relieved at this stage because you're just thinking it's another game done. And then as soon as that relief's felt, you can then start to really enjoy it. And I think the relief is just because you've not fully digested what's happened. But I think once you start looking around and you see the joy in everyone else's faces, it can quickly then just get straight on to, celebrating the win in itself and, just getting totally engrossed in it all. Like that, I think that's how last night felt. There was a real feeling with everyone, regardless of people I spoke to right after the game or guys I was bumping into whilst I was waiting on my Uber car at the back of 12 last night. Everyone just wanted to talk to each other. Like, I don't think there was one occasion yesterday after the game where I walked past a Hearts fan and there wasn't some sort of exchange. A lot of it was brief, a lot of it was just a quick hug and just, saying come on the Hearts. But there was times where you'd stop for a couple of minutes and you would have a chat about something, or kind of you got to Motherwell, and that's like that. We know how easy it is for football fans to not get along with each other, and
Yeah.
Hearts fans have been divided in the past about a lot of things. I think we should actually savour just how united the fan base is just now, and there isn't those issues. There's not those issues that have plagued us in the past, whether it's been arguments about certain players, arguments about the manager, arguments about the board. It's that was a wonderful feeling to know that if you were walking towards somebody and you saw them around, you knew straight away that you were going to engage in a really positive way. And I thought that was really nice. And hopefully that's something that will continue on Saturday. I'm sure it will. With it being a late kick-off, I think Saturday's going to be just a carnival. Like, if I think back to the Kilmarnock and Dundee United games where it's been later kick-offs away from home, I certainly think, Saturday will be, definitely a party atmosphere, hopefully for the 90 minutes, because hopefully we'll see that game through and get our 3 points. But but yeah, it's just been brilliant.
We'll wrap up and get to the Motherwell game in just a second. But as Tony Bloom was saying in the boardroom afterwards, he is Hearts' lucky charm. Played 6, won 5, and drawn 1. That game against Celtic at Tynecastle, the 2-2, is his record when he has been at games watching Heart of Midlothian. And I'm sure with Brighton obviously in contention in the Premier League, potentially for a European spot, he will be trying to juggle his diary to see if he can get to both of his clubs, plus Union Saint-Gilloise in Belgium. But Hearts beat Rangers by 2-1, played 35, 76 points. Hearts lead the table with 3 games to go. Second place Celtic played 35, 73 points, and a goal difference of 5, worse off than Hearts. And Rangers now, with only 9 points up for grabs, are 7 points behind Hearts and have to go to Celtic on Sunday. Hearts against Motherwell preview is coming up on Scarves Around the Funnel, brought to you by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald's Signs, who've been offering creative sign and print solution since the 1950s. Okay, let's wrap this up and inform you of who will be taking charge of the game at Fir Park this weekend. Stephen McLean has been given the nod to be the referee for the game. Ross McLeod, Scott Anderson running the line. In the VAR studio, Greg Aitken is in charge with his assistant, Gary Hilland. Incidentally, the Old Firm referee will be Nick Walsh. So Motherwell against Hearts. Laurie, Scott's just described it as potentially a carnival. What is Derek McInnes going to do with his starting lineup, given how well things went in the second half against Rangers? Do you expect many changes for this one, or just one obvious one?
Honestly, I think it's a really tough one. I do worry about this game from a perspective that I think we'll need legs, and we spoke about this last night. I don't have to keep clarifying that because it doesn't matter for people listening, but there's lots of things that we spoke about in the pub that we're speaking about again now. But um, we don't know what's happening with Cammy Devlin and Harry Milne.
I don't think we're going to see them. I've kind of
You're
almost
not, no, you're not starting them.
no, but I just think I've kind of almost told myself now I won't see them. I'm not saying that that's definitely the case. I'm just saying in my mind I don't want to keep going game to game hoping that they're going to be available. So I've kind of almost written them off. And if they do turn up, it's a bonus. But I would have thought Saturday would be too soon, even if they are going
I
to be
think
able to play some part.
it's an interesting one because Blair Spittle is the obvious one to come in. However, we did play Blair Spittle in the middle last time we went to Fair Park and it didn't work. And I think the thing with Motherwell, and I said this to Scott last night, there's me going again. This season, the team that I think we've just not really had any answer to for a big part of the first game at Tynecastle, a bit of the second half at Fir Park, and then a big period of the second half at Tynecastle again is Motherwell, where there's just been a point where it's like they've just got a number here. And to be fair, they've done it in other games. You know, the game to beat Celtic home, especially. I don't know if I've ever seen Celtic get that outplayed for an entire game by a non by outside of maybe even including Rangers, just start to finish, they were just absolutely all over them. So uh, I have a feeling, and I don't know what it is, but the McInnes will have something he's going to try that maybe we don't know what it will be yet. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing.
Is this a game to try something?
Not like an experiment as such, but something to counter the fact that when Motherwell, we've tried going right at them, and there was that, the period at Tynecastle, to be fair, when we changed and basically went to that kind of four effectively and tried to completely close Motherwell down, they just bypassed the press, and there was a period where it was just they were just cutting through us at will, and we had to adapt again because if it wasn't for Maswinise thankfully losing the shooting boots, they should have been at least a goal ahead, probably two. So we've tried being aggressive with them and it's not worked in that occasion, albeit it did work well. And when we went for it at Tynecastle, albeit in a funny way, a 3-0 game's a very different dynamic because a team naturally steps off and you can throw everything at them because it's almost like, well, what's there to lose now? So I honestly struggle to, and I'm interested because Scott's a lot more in tune on the, he analyzes the games really well. So I'm very interested in what Scott's thoughts on this are because I honestly, I don't know if Motherwell are on their game, and that is the thing, they've not been on their game every week, but if they're on their game, the way they stretch teams and the way they move players around the park, it's hard to go man for them because they just drag players all over the place and it opens up gaps, which is obviously what we like to do sometimes. If we just try and press spaces, they've also found a way around that against us at times. So I know, knowing what McInnes is like, he's going to be really thinking about what Motherwell are doing. So I just think he'll have some idea about what he wants to do to nullify Motherwell, as much as I know it annoys people. But I think that's the type of manager he is, and that's worked for us this season. I just don't know what it is quite yet. And I just had this feeling that maybe he's got something new that he thinks might be that solution. I'll hand over to Scott because I'm asking questions rather than giving you an answer.
Well, look, for what it's worth, I don't think the man for man works because it's so fluid a system,
No, it
especially
doesn't.
in the
No.
final third where they don't have what you'd call an out and out number nine. So because of that, when you go man for man, you're really putting a lot on your two centre halves because
Yeah.
they're going to get pulled and dragged out
Or
into
three.
positions that they don't really want to. And I mean, look at Halkett with that time he got turned at Tynecastle recently. You just so I think they've got to be patient. I think they're going to have to be a little bit cute about how they approach the game. I think the fans need to as well, because I think one of the things, can't see this happening when we're away from home, but when we were at home in Motherwell recently, what fans weren't grasping was that to go man for man, you then can't be pressing on the goalie. And I
Yeah,
think
Shankland
fans
actually had to
fans
tell the
fans
fans, didn't he, in that
instantly,
game?
yeah, fans instantly want to see a goalie being shut down. And we know that Ward has a clanger in him, which I think sort of amplifies that desire for the stands. But I think the fans that go on Saturday need to have that understanding and patience that if we do decide to go man for man, that doesn't include the goalie, because straight away you're giving them an advantage by trying to shut him down. So it wouldn't surprise me if it really wouldn't surprise me if Altena comes in and we shift into a wing back system and we maybe go free at the back and we maybe try and be a bit more compact in midfield. Because I think what we've tried to do in the past is we've tried to go man for man, but we've tried to do it within our usual shape. So we've tried to do it through a like a 4-4-2 or a 4-2-4. I think for me, you probably need to have three midfielders in there rather than
The
say to
third spot.
Shankland or
Who's,
Braga,
who's your third?
drop in there. Well, this is the problem. I think Laurie's spot on. I think Spittle
Yes. Yep.
Spittle has struggled in a couple of these games. His best performance was earlier in the season when he came off the bench along with Braga to help turn that game around. And I'm obviously saying Altena could be the option at right wing back, but then Altena's maybe the only viable option we've got to maybe be another central midfielder just now because I mean, unless they recall bloody Xander Khartoum, they've not really got any other options
Jesus.
for centre mid now,
I thought
eh?
you'd seen.
It's a difficult one because although I could see the merits in going to that system and going to three at the back, I just don't know about the personnel. Do you then maybe drop Shankland in the 10 and you bring Kabori in to partner? I don't know. I really don't. It's a difficult one. I think Motherwell, look, everyone will focus on that Rangers win, but that's the only game they've won in the last 8 games. So their form isn't great. Their performances have still been generally pretty decent, but their form isn't great. And Motherwell are another team, for all their good play, they don't create a lot of chances. I watched the Rangers game back a couple of weeks ago, and actually, when you look at what Motherwell create in that game for all their dominance from a possession standpoint, it isn't a lot. So I kind of feel like if we can frustrate them by just being compact as a unit rather than trying to force the game on them and press them and maybe go with two guys with legs up front, maybe go with that, whether it be a 3-4-3, maybe have Shankland just playing off Ikebori and Braga and maybe just going long again, just asking Kingsley and whoever else to just hit those channels and have Kabori and Braga try to turn them. Because let's be honest, the likes of McGinn and O'Donnell and that have had great seasons, but we all know that they will not want to be turned going up against Kabori and Braga. So that's maybe something they need to think about. Uh, it's a hard one. It's a hard one because we're missing so many options that could have plugged that gap in midfield. Cammy, McAtee, Magnuson, as it's a bit of a nightmare given the level of injuries we've got, but that's a
How did Falkirk
potential
set up?
option.
They seem to have a.
I'm just
Well,
checking that
that's
right
it.
now.
Falkirk have been a
They've gone
bogey
four two
team,
three
eh?
one.
Like,
They have. They went 4-2-3-1 in all the
aye.
games. So do we do that? Who knows? Who knows what we're going to do? But I agree with Laurie. I think Blair Spittle, his role this weekend is going to be as an impact player. Kizaridis, I think, starts because I think in that wide area, he's wanting Derek McInnes, someone that is going to track back and someone that's going to put a shift in, and he knows he's going to do that. I think the positions depending on the formation, are who's going to be the third midfielder, if that's what we go for, and who's going to play on the right-hand side. That's still
I
to
mean, the
be
thing you could
answered.
do, so that you're shifting from one formation to the next, is you could go 3-4-3, but you could have Spittle be in the 10, but at times that can then switch into a 4-4-2 because Kizadidis moves up into a wide position, Spittle moves over to the left, and then Kingsley's just shifting back and Steinvender's shifting over. So there is a degree of flexibility in the personnel we have. I think it's that third midfielder thing. I think that's
Yeah.
the main sort of question mark, isn't it? Because look, don't get me wrong, Spill's been great, but he's been great coming off the bench the last couple of weeks. It's whether you'd get that out of him over a 90 minutes or a 70 minutes. That's the sticking point, I think.
Prediction time. We'll start with you, Laurie.
Oh.
You're building the drama.
I said before Rangers, to someone that my head says 1-1 and my heart was saying 3-1 Hearts. So my kind of head's saying a draw on this one. But I'm gonna which is funny because draw might be good. Draw might be fine. But we're at that point in the season where we've got to show a bit of bottle. The Hearts players are showing a bit of bottle, so I'm going to try and do the same. So I'm going to go for a Hearts win. I think I now consciously predict Hearts will win by 2 goals because I really just desperately want us to be 2 goals ahead in a game, but it's still going to happen. It's still going to happen. So probably be another narrow one. Motherwell will cause us problems. I imagine they will find a goal themselves, but we've got goals in us, so let me go 2-1 with Hearts in this one. And I'm going to say set plays might be our danger here. So I'm thinking our threat, I should say. A goal from a set play and Big Craig Halks to get up in a booming header at some point in the game. So there we go. 2-1 Hearts, Craig Halkett to get a goal.
I'm going to go 1-1.
Oh, see, look at that. I'm trying to. That's what I was going to go with, but I tried to. Yeah.
I think this is one of the hardest games of the 5. And I know the record's not been great, but the way they played against us and the way that they played in that first half against Rangers.
But they still lost 3-1 against us.
I know.
Like, this is the fact. Like, didn't get me wrong. From a neutral point of view, I agree with all the plaudits that they've had this season. They're really nice to watch. I love the risks that they take. I love just how good a job Bertolascu's done with them, but they still have a lot of flaws within that system in terms of not creating as many chances as they should be, that level of possession, and also being susceptible to losing goals. They had a really good run of form where they had a lot of clean sheets, but they're now losing quite a number of goals as well. So I do think this is a game we should be going out there to win because ultimately
keep believing, Mark.
We are ultimately the team.
I think we win the league.
Team that have something to play for on Saturday, and that does have to count for something. I think having that will and that sheer will that you saw, and particularly the second half last night, there's no reason why we can't carry that on. And I'm not saying that that'll make the game any easier, but I just think in a season where it's been about fine margins, the fact that we've got something to play for and they don't should be that fine margin that gets us over the line.
Remind me of your prediction, Scott, please.
I'm going to say 1-0.
Okay.
Because I don't think it's going to be a game of many chances.
I agree.
I think Shankland will score.
We will see. Potentially just 3 games away from creating history. A win at Fir Park on Saturday would be quite something. And then we can sit back and hope that Celtic don't beat Rangers in the Old Firm game on Sunday.
Can I just finish up with something?
Quite a lot, and Scott McIntosh can indeed finish up with something.
I wanted to give this warning to Hearts fans, okay? I wanted to just sort of let you know that
Did we get some popcorn?
Well, I've been reliably informed. Obviously, you know, I'm a bit of an interloper with Hibs because of my son and that. But I've been reliably informed that if we do win the league, it's not really something to enjoy. So I'm going to read this post that a Hibs fan has put on Hibs.net earlier today. So this is from Jamesy.
Okay.
Hearts might win the league, But watching them celebrate last weekend outside soulless pubs in their deserted post-industrial wasteland, remember they're the warrior poets, this lot, so remember there's gonna be a lot of this sort of language in there, made me grateful for what we have. The ability to wander through the shore after the game, the rich tapestry of Hibs' living history all around me, a vibrant place, a bohemian neighbourhood. Never fucking heard of Leaf being called bohemian before. Recognised as on the up, where people actively want to visit as opposed to simply being a good place to come from. A club like its community with a history steeped in perseverance and romanticism. They might be crowned league champions, but they'll never have any of that, no matter what they win. And I'd never swap any of it just for a league trophy. What a fucking zoomer that guy is, eh? My God, the levels of cope going on in his household. That is straw clutching to the nth degree, yeah. Imagine talking about Leaf being a bohemian neighbourhood like that's a fucking trophy. What an arsehole. Sorry, just had to make sure that gets out there because that was fucking superb.
I was going to say goodbye as well.
Eh?
I'll
The
say it
warrior
now.
poets, they're up to their old tricks again, eh?
From Laurie, from Scott, and from myself, come on the Hearts. Bye for now.